All right, we're here on the Turn the Page podcast where we transform lives. Turn the Page podcast, we transform lives, help you turn the page in your life, right? So, today's conversation, we're going to be talking about uncertainty. All right, we're going to be talking about uncertainty. Why is this an important conversation? Because we come into so many situations that we're uncertain about. We're always dealing with uncertainty, but it has its biggest impact on us when we're in a situation where we're about to make change in our life. Essentially, make a decision that might lend itself to big change in our life. Maybe it might be moving or career or starting down a new path, beginning a journey, a transformation in any area of your life. You're gonna deal with uncertainty, and uncertainty causes you to be filled with anxiety and worry and stress. And what uncertainty begins to do is it acts as like a paralytic for you progressing and making changes in your life. Keyword change. It acts as a paralytic to that change. We don't introduce change into our life because we don't want to deal with the uncertainty that change is going to bring with it, right? Because if we change nothing, everything is familiar. And familiarity breeds comfortability. We like to be comfortable. We like to be in the know. And when we have that certainty in the familiar, even if it's bad, we're willing to stick with it. Mainly because we don't want to deal with uncertainty. We don't want to deal with the anxiousness of certainty, the fears of certainty, the not knowing how we're going to overcome or how to make it through. This is a big thing. I can think of multiple times in my life where I was very hesitant on making certain decisions, or I was struggling to make change. Okay. A specific situation for me. I'm actually in the process of becoming a licensed minister at this moment, in the process of doing that. I've always been worried about doing that. There's a lot of fears. I was uncertain about how certain things are going to go in my life now that I'm getting a title and things like that. However, I let that fear of that uncertainty stop me from making that decision for years. And finally, after I overcame certain things, when some I'm going to share with you today, I was willing to go forward with the process. Now, that's just one example. I can think of times in my career, love life, friendships, dealing with inner growth and inner change, dealing with familial change in situations. We all deal with things like that, and we refuse to make the necessary changes because of that uncertainty. And that's why we're going to talk about it today. So what I'm about to do is we're going to talk through about 5 different things that you can do to help you deal with uncertainty so that it doesn't keep you paralyzed in the place that you are. All right. So let's jump right into it. The first thing that we're going to talk about as it relates to dealing with uncertainty or overcoming uncertainty is some mindset thing. Develop a growth mindset. What's one of the ways that we can overcome uncertainty and deal with it? Developing a growth mindset. Now let's talk about why that is. Well, first, let's talk about what that is. A growth mindset is a mind that's set on growth. When you think about mindset, it's this mode or this system that you're setting your mind to. This is the default operating system of my mind. I need you to make the default operating system of your mind to be that of growth. A growth mindset. Having a growth mindset. Developing a growth mindset. Living in that growth mindset. Having a mind set on growth. Now, first, as a disclaimer, I don't want to make it seem as if if you've reached a place in life and you're comfortable, or you've achieved the goals that you set out to do, and you're taking a breath and soaking it all in, that's okay. That's okay. But you got to that point. And the reality about how our minds work, you might enjoy it now, but one day you're going to get tired of that place. That's just the reality of how God made us, how our brains are wired, how our psyches and souls are wired. We don't like things to stay still. Water becomes full of bacteria when it doesn't stay still. Like we need movement. We need growth. So if you've got to the place you're aiming for, enjoy the view, but you still got to have that mindset on growth, because eventually you're going to outgrow that place, right? So that's just getting the talking about the mindset of growth. But how does having that mindset help you overcome uncertainty? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's a good question, right? The reason that having a growth mindset helps you deal with uncertainty or move forward even in the face of uncertainty is because growth is full of dealing with uncertainty. Growth is full of change. Growth is change. There is no growth without change. You can change and not grow, but you can't grow without change. A seed grows into a tree. That's a huge change. A baby grows into an adult. That's a huge change. A puppy grows into a dog. That's a huge change. Anytime there's growth, change is going to come with it. So if you have this mind where you refuse to engage yourself with growth, you're never going to build up the chutzpah, the oomph to walk into that uncertainty. You know, part of dealing with uncertainty is the willingness to walk into it. Like it doesn't go away. Whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, you're going to walk through uncertainty. You're absolutely going to walk through uncertainty. No matter where it is you're trying to go, what it is you're trying to get accomplished, you're going to have to travel through uncertainty. The road to your destination is through uncertainty. There ain't no way around it. There's no way around it. You're going to have to deal with that uncertainty. And if you have that mindset that's set on growth, you're going to be willing to confront that uncertainty because it's not really going to go away. And to be honest, you have a lot less certainty than you think. You have a lot less certainty than you think. See, you're uncertain about what's going to happen when you get in the car and drive to work. But you don't fear that oh my God, no, I'm sorry for some of the people that have extreme anxiety on that level. Another conversation for you. But for the general population, you're not freaking out to get in the car to go to work because you've done it so many times. You don't know what's going to happen, but you're familiar with it. You're still uncertain, but you're familiar with it. Which leads me to point out that there's some relationship between, the paralysis of uncertainty. There's a relationship between that familiarity and unfamiliarity. Because it's really the unfamiliar part that breeds the issue with uncertainty. Not the familiar part. If we don't have a lot of uncertainty about things we're familiar with, but if we're unfamiliar with it, a lot of that uncertainty is going to spring itself up. But becoming familiar with something that you're unfamiliar with, it's just a matter of continuing to go down that path, continuing to continuously exercise that thing and get some experience in it. And a person that's willing to garner more experiences or new experiences is typically a person that's willing to grow. And a person that's willing to grow has that mindset that they want to grow. You're having a mindset that, you know what? I want my finances to grow. I want my financial well-being to grow. I want my spirit to grow. I want my spiritual well-being to grow. I want my emotional maturity and emotional IQ to grow. I want to grow in my emotions. I want to grow in my mind. I want to become a more intellectual person. I want to grow in relationships. When you become a person, and if you're going to segment your life out like that, I want to grow in my career. I want to grow in this hobby. I want to grow in leadership. Whatever it is that you're in or you attach yourself to or you're a part of, and you say, hey, I want to grow, you're willing to deal with the unfamiliar. You're willing to deal with the uncertainty. One of the things that I love as it relates to growth is thinking about the transformation or the change that a seed goes through on its way to becoming a tree. I think this is such an interesting thing because I used to always be like, man, how does the seed become the tree? Like, that's a huge change, right? Does the seed expand? Like, what's happening? In all honesty, a seed is like a system, right? So basically the seed tells every other part of itness of the seed of things to do. So inside a seed, inside the kernel, you have, I guess you can call it the brain of the seed, and then you have some food. In short, some other stuff. But it's like the brain of the seed and the food, and they're inside the kernel. When it's inside the kernel, it gets some water and food, and the brain, needs energy. It starts kind of eating the food of store of energy that's already in there. Kernel pops, and as this happens, the seed, the brain of the seed needs to eat more. And that's what the nutrients, the watering, and all of that stuff. And it's telling as the roots begin to grow out of it, so it extends the roots, the brain begins to eat, and then the roots begin to just immediately start coming. And you see that if you've ever germinated a seed. The purpose of those roots is to gain more material. So whatever nutrients and things are around, the nutrients and the water that you water it with, it starts eating those things. Then the brain takes what it eats and tells it to send the nutrients that it just soaked up, and it sends it to another part of the root. And it says, hey, you need to extend yourself more so we can get more food. So it's like it's soaking up the nutrients and replacing the nutrients, right? So I eat the nutrients, eat it up, and then I'm going to take what I ate and build something with me, right? So it's constantly soaking up something new and putting it at the end of itself, right? All of that is newness. All of that is newness. It's taking in new, and then it's creating new, and that's the process of growth. And as it continues to do that, it soaks up more water and more nutrients. It has more material, more building material that it sends to the roots, and it starts to build more, soak up more, build more, and eventually it says, hey, let's start building the stalk. So it's building more roots and building the stalk, and the seed is just constantly telling this whole system, hey, you keep gaining this new information, you keep gaining these new resources, and I need you to take what you gained and put it over here. Taking in new and spitting out new. Taking in new and creating new. That's the process of growth. The process of your growth, taking in new, unfamiliar, and creating new, unfamiliar. You can't have new and familiar, because if it's familiar, it's not new. If it's familiar, it's not new. It's not a new experience. It's not something new if your experience with it is used. You get what I'm saying? So with this newness and growth, the process of growth requires you to take in new and take the newness that you took in and redistribute it somewhere to create more newness. Taking in new to create more new. That's unfamiliar. New is unfamiliar. Taking in just newness, unfamiliar. That's the process of growth, right? So if you can have that growth mindset, you're willing to deal with the unfamiliar, and you're willing to deal with the uncertainty. You're going to change a lot of words. I know you're trekking with me. This is recorded, so you can go back and rewind it and take some notes. That's why good for recording. But overcoming uncertainty, having a growth mindset, a mindset set on growth, a mind that's willing to take in new resources and create new output with it in this process of growth. That is the process of growth, the process of expansion. Even think about if you take a cup of water or something and you spill it on a table, you spill it on the surface, all right? The only part of the surface that's wet is the part that it touches, but as the water expands, it touches more surface. As you expand, you touch more surface. As you grow, you touch more surface. You're capable of being involved in more things as you grow. The more is always new. Like growth, new, uncertainty, unfamiliar. They're all linked in together. And if you can become willing to grow, by default, you're going to be comfortable with dealing with uncertainty. Or if not comfortable, willing. And that's one of the later points we'll talk about. But that's why I made that one the first point, because I really wanted to drive that one home, getting that growth mindset, a mindset set on growth. If I have a growth mindset, I'm going to consistently put myself in the face of new experiences. I'm going to consistently come face to face with the unfamiliar. I'm going to consistently be willing to trudge forward into the uncertainty of the future. And I'm willing to do that because I have that growth mindset. And if you want to become more comfortable with going through uncertainty, start with your mind, a mind that's set on growth, a mind that says, whatever it takes for me to grow, I'm willing to do, even if that growth requires me to deal with uncertainty. It just is what it is, right? So, first thing, all right, developing a growth mindset. All right, so number 2, the second thing that we can do to help us overcome uncertainty is focus on what you can control. Number 2, focus on what you can control. Because in every situation you deal with, everything falls into 2 categories. This category or this one. Either I can do something about it or I can't do anything about it. I can do something about it or I can't do nothing about it. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. Either you can do something about it or you can't. If anything within the midst of your uncertainty, if there's something that you have control over, take full on control of that. If you have control, the parts you have control over, grab hold of that. Like the things that you don't have control over, there's no reason to even allow that to soak up some of that mental capacity, the mental space, the mental real estate. Why? Because there's nothing you can do about it anyway. And if there is something you can do about it, why aren't you doing anything about it? Like that's just the simplistic way of putting it. If you can do something about a situation, don't complain, do it. If you're gonna be forced with dealing with the uncertainty of the future of a situation, well, what parts of this situation do you have control over? And are you taking advantage of the control that you have in that area of the situation? You know, it's very rare that you come into situations that you have total control over any and everything going on. Very rarely does that happen. But rarely, but not really, but constantly what happens is that you got some control. There's some variables in this equation that you have a direct impact on. And what I need you to do is start taking advantage of the direct impact that you can have in certain situations. What things can you control? That's where your focus needs to be on. I'm gonna be dealing with something that I'm uncertain about. Well, let's segment it. What aspects of this uncertainty do I have control over? What aspects of this uncertainty do I have no control over? I have no control over, I'm gonna pray. I have control over it, I'm gonna do. There's doing and then there's praying. There's doing for y'all that don't pray, there's doing and then there's hoping. There's doing and there's manifesting. Whatever that thing looks like for you, you do what you can And whatever the other part is, it is what it is. Like, that's the uncertainty of it, the unfamiliar, the lack of control, the not knowing. But you don't have a lack of control over the whole thing. You have control somewhere, and what you have to do is grab life by the horn. Grab the situation by the horn. Whatever parts of this uncertainty that you're dealing with, that you have a level of control or a level of influence, take advantage of that. Utilize that. Do what you can to help steer this thing to the outcome that you so desire. Don't worry about what you can't control. You can't do nothing about it anyway. Let that be what it's going to be. But what you can control, tap into that thing, dig into it, and do your part, right? So, first thing we talked about, overcoming uncertainty, developing a growth mindset. The second one we talked about was focusing on what you can control, all right? Number 3, the third thing is learn to tolerate discomfort. Learn to tolerate discomfort. Learn, like, this is an endurance, having some grit about you. This is just something that you're going to be okay with. You're going to have to learn to be okay with. Excuse me. Within this thing of dealing with uncertainty, you're going to be discomforted by a lot of things. There's going to be some things that you just don't like. There's going to be some feelings you feel that you would rather not feel and you'd rather not experience, but some of those things might be necessary. Like, some of the solution is you just got to endure. You just got to hold on. You just got to see it all the way through. You got to ride this wave to the end, even if it's uncomfortable. You have to learn to tolerate discomfort. Everything isn't going to feel good the entire time, but just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean that it's not good for you. It's a whole nother conversation to talk about healing. Healing don't feel good, but it is good, right? Being healed feels good, but that process of healing doesn't feel good. And if you can't learn to tolerate the discomfort of going through the process of healing, you might never reach that place of being healed like you want to be, right? So if you don't learn to tolerate discomfort, you're not going to be able to grow. You're not going to be able to experience new. You're not going to be able to deal with change. And moreover, it's going to stop you at any situation where uncertainty shows up, because there's a level of uncertainty that is just flat out uncomfortable, that you just don't like. And if you don't learn to tolerate that discomfort, you're going to be stuck in the same spot for a long time. One of the things that I recommend doing, if you have the ability, cold showers for one. Because sudden cold is uncomfortable. But do that to build your mind up with the habit of just becoming comfortable with discomfort. I like to go to the gym I go to, and I will get in the hot tub, then jump in the pool. I wish there's a cold tub, because when you switch from that hot to cold, it's discomforting. It's uncomfortable. Or going from a sauna, right out the sauna, jumping right into a cold shower. It's uncomfortable. You know, pushing myself to stay in the sauna a little longer than I want to, it's uncomfortable, but I'm doing it anyway because I'm building up my muscle to tolerate discomfort. You know, directly through that, I know in the past, I've had situations where I've dealt with and I've stayed in it for a little minute, despite how uncomfortable it was, because there was something that I needed. It's like, okay, I need to endure this for a season. You get this one for free. Things don't stay the same anyway. Like, it's not always going to be this way. So endure it to get to where you need to be. Some parts of what you're dealing with, you're just going to have to endure. You're going to have to tolerate the discomfort of uncertainty at times. Sometimes there's some things you can do about it. Sometimes it's like, okay, you don't like it. Cool. Keep going. Get yourself a friend. Get yourself somebody that you can say, hey, listen, I need a place to release this, to have this conversation or something. Do a podcast, a vlog or something to get all your frustration out, but then get back to work. Learn to tolerate the discomfort. You want to grow, you want change, you want new, you're going to learn how to deal with uncertainty. You're going to have to learn to tolerate the discomfort of uncertainty. All right. Continuing on this conversation. All right. So, dealing and overcoming moments of uncertainty that prevent us from growing. We looked at 1, developing a growth mindset. 2, focusing on what you can control. 3, learning to tolerate the discomfort. Number 4, and honestly, this is one of my second favorite ones. Last was actually my favorite one. Seek knowledge and perspective. Seek knowledge and perspective. If you're uncertain about something, there's some things that you don't know and there's some things that you don't see. And you got to go find what you need to know and find how you need to look at it. That's what I mean by gaining knowledge and gaining perspective. What information can I go find that deals with the realm of the area I'm about to walk into that I have a lot of uncertainty with? What can I read? What podcasts can I listen to? What audiobooks can I download? What articles can I read on Google? What stuff can I find on TikTok or other social media or people talking about it? Who can I go have a conversation with? Who can I go ask questions to that deal with this? Like, there's knowledge out there. And if you get a certain level of knowledge, it might help ease that discomfort of the uncertainty. It might help you become a little bit more certain about how things work if you get that information. So you got to go seek that knowledge. And the reason I threw perspective in there as well, because you need to know how to see the situation. I like the word circumspect. It means to see things circumspectly around, see every angle. You only see the way you see. You can only see the way that you see. So if I can learn what somebody else sees when they look at this thing, now I've gained perspective. I've now have another angle to look at this situation on. Because the way you look at it, the way you perceive it is going to determine the way with which you respond to it and the way with which you handle it, how you prioritize different facets of this thing you're looking at. But when I gain perspective, when I learn to see this through somebody else's eyes, they're going to see it differently than me. There's going to be some aspects that they reprioritize. Well, why is this more important than that? Oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. Now you just gained some perspective. Oh, you've been through this before? What do you remember? What do you see? Now you've gained some knowledge and perspective. When you're dealing with uncertainty, getting some more knowledge and getting some more perspective will absolutely help you. It will absolutely help you. That's why it's on this list. It's going to help you deal with the anxieties of uncertainty that pop up. Dealing with uncertainty, overcoming it. First tip strategy we gave you, developing a growth mindset. Number 2, focus on the things you can control. Number 3, learning to tolerate discomfort. And number 4, seek knowledge and perspective. The last one, and this is my favorite one. Be flexible. Be flexible, all right? Be flexible. You can't be so rigid. Things don't always go the way that you think they're gonna go, especially with uncertainty. You gotta be flexible. You gotta be able to roll with the flow. Let me look, I got a quote. Empty your mind. I got this quote on my office wall. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless like water. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow or water can crash. Be water, my friend. That's a quote by Bruce Lee. Be flexible. Water gonna do what water's gonna do. And no matter where you put water, water gonna be water, and water not gonna stop being water, irregardless of the situation that you put it in. Water gonna do what water gonna do. And that's how you need to be. You need to be flexible enough to say, hey, this thing didn't go, or this thing isn't going originally how I thought. Let me be flexible enough to adapt to this change. Let me be flexible enough to say, you know what, I'm going to let this go and pick this up real quick. You got to be able to change on the fly sometimes. right? You got to be able to go with the flow at times. You're not going to have firm control over every single solitary thing that presents itself in the situation, and you got to be flexible enough. Bend, but don't break. Rubber bands that can't stretch end up popping. Rubber bands that aren't flexible, you stretch and they pop. Like, you got to be flexible. You got to be able to go with the flow sometimes. Sometimes you got to have that word mindset again, this mindset that, you know what, whatever show up, I'm just going to roll with it. Come with it. Whatever show up, I'm just going to roll with it because I'm flexible enough. I got my plan. I've thought this thing through. I know how I want to handle this situation. But whatever happens, happens, and I'm just going to roll with it. I'm going to be flexible as these things show up. And if you don't learn how to be flexible with certain things, it's going to make it really hard for you to deal with uncertainty. I bet there's some relationship between your physical flexibility and your life flexibility. Guarantee it. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. If you are rigid muscle, you're probably stubborn and rigid in life and inflexible. You need some flexibility. If you can understand how damaging it is to your physical health to not be physically flexible, you got to understand it's going to be the same thing to your inner health without you developing some inner flexibility. All right, get some flexibility with you. Okay, so again, five things for helping you deal with uncertainty. Run through them again. 1, developing a growth mindset. 2, focus on what you can control. 3, learn to tolerate discomfort. 4, seek knowledge and perspective. And 5, be flexible. All right. So, guys, this was a great conversation. Turn the Page podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at I Am Kenneth Page, Facebook as well, at I Am Kenneth Page, across all platforms. Website coming out soon. Turn the Page. Turn the page in your life. Make that transformation. Out.